She doesn't know I'm standing 10 feet away. That's the first clear thought that cut through the static in my skull as I stood there, motionless, holding a half-filled carafe of Pinot in my left hand like it was made of stone. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I was walking back from the guest bathroom, took the longer hallway to avoid the noisy dogs in the kitchen, and passed by the slightly ajar guest room door. I heard laughter. Light, airy, Sarah's laugh. I paused just for a second, smiling, until I heard what followed. He doesn't even know I'm pregnant, and it's not his. Just like that, my ears started ringing. You know the kind of high-pitched whine that floods in after a firecracker goes off too close to your head? Except this wasn't noise. It was silence. A silencing. I kept staring at the crack in the door like it might change what I'd just heard. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe she meant someone else. Maybe— "Oh my God, Sarah!" one of the women shrieked. Another laughed so hard she choked on her wine. "Does he even suspect?" "Not a clue," Sarah said. "Poor man still kisses my stomach like it's his legacy." That one landed like a brick to the teeth. I didn't move. My fingers squeezed the carafe a little too tightly. I was aware enough not to drop it, but not enough to fake a breath. My face must have looked like someone paused a VHS tape mid-stroke, half smile, half stunned, all drained. I didn't cry. That's not the kind of man I am. But something cracked, somewhere internal, like drywall behind wallpaper. And that's when it hit me. She doesn't know I'm standing 10 feet away. I exhaled, slowly, a long, deliberate breath. Then I turned, walked to the dining room and poured wine like nothing happened. I smiled when someone cracked a joke about politics, nodded politely when the hostess apologized for overcooking the fish. When Sarah rejoined us, glowing and flushed from laughter, she sat beside me and placed a hand over mine. "You okay, babe?" she whispered. "Of course," I said. "Why wouldn't I be?" I don't know what expression I wore when I said it, but she didn't press. If you're reading this, and over 97% of you do without subscribing, consider hitting that follow button. It tells our team these stories matter, that they land, and it helps us keep going, deeper, sharper, more raw. Thank you. Back at the table, I kept smiling. I chewed, swallowed, lifted my glass, toasted to the future. I even kissed her temple when someone proposed a game about guessing baby names. It was a stupid little game, but I played it, because now I was playing a much bigger one. Sarah had no idea the man sitting next to her, the one she thought she'd fooled, was already calculating, not reacting, not confronting, just absorbing. And the funny thing is, that's always been her mistake with me. She thought quiet meant weak, that politeness meant ignorance, that not asking meant not knowing. But I had seen too much in my life to jump at the first betrayal. At 63, you don't go nuclear, you go precise. I noticed her friends glancing at me now and then, subtle glances, nothing blatant, like they were daring me to know, testing whether I'd overheard. Sarah kept her mask on well, but she fiddled with her ring more than usual. Nervous tick. She always did that during her lies. I just never connected the dots before. But now? Now everything snapped into place. The missed calls she never returned while I stood right beside her. The new doctor's office she insisted on using, one in the city, 45 minutes away because they had cuter ultrasound prints. The expensive prenatal massage gift cards she'd buy for herself and conveniently lose the receipts for. The late-night vitamins she only took when she thought I was asleep. I had been willfully blind. She had been actively deceptive. And her friends, willing accomplices, laughing in that room like it was a sitcom, one where I was the clueless husband with the punchline written across his forehead. But the thing about quiet men, they tend to notice everything once they start watching. Sarah excused herself early that night. She said she was tired. I offered to drive. She refused. "I'll take the car. You stay and enjoy," she said. The other women nodded approvingly. I stayed, smiled, had a scotch with the host, who didn't know his living room had just hosted a betrayal. When I got home, she was already asleep, or pretending to be. I stood in the doorway for a while, just watching her. Then I sat at the kitchen table, pulled out a blank notepad, wrote the date, November 4th, then the time, then the words, dinner party, guest room, confession. I closed the notebook, slid it beneath the napkin drawer, and went to bed. I didn't touch her that night, and she didn't ask why. The human mind does a funny thing when it's been betrayed. It rewinds, not just to one moment, but all the moments, and each one suddenly feels like a crime scene you failed to secure. I wasn't sleeping much, not out of heartbreak, not yet, more like my brain wouldn't shut up. It was rifling through memories like an overworked detective looking for anything he'd missed, and it turns out I'd missed a lot. Sarah had always been a little unpredictable. That's part of what I loved about her. She once dyed her hair cherry red on a whim just to see if I'd notice. I did. It looked ridiculous. I told her it didn't. She was spontaneous, intense, alive in ways I wasn't. I brought calm, she brought fire. That was our balance. But over the last 4 months, the fire dimmed, or maybe just moved elsewhere. She started coming home later from work. No big scene about it, just had to stay late. The Peterson case is a mess. She's a paralegal, and I knew that case. I believed her. But it started happening 3 times a week, then 4. Once, I offered to swing by with food, and she snapped, "Don't, it's chaos here, I'll eat when I can." I didn't go. She used to show me ultrasound photos like they were treasures. Now, she mentioned appointments in passing, never asked me to come. I chalked it up to her being stressed, hormonal, anxious. I Googled every explanation except the obvious one. One morning in late September, she forgot her phone on the table when she showered. It lit up 3 times in 2 minutes. All texts from a contact saved as Marcia, yoga. Thing is, Sarah hated yoga. She'd told me many times that it made her itchy and mad. Still, I never touched the phone. I told myself I was above that. That trust meant not needing to look. Now, I remembered the expression she wore when she came back into the room and saw it sitting there, lit up. The way she went still for just a breath, then smiled, too fast, and said, "God, Marcia won't stop sending me breathing tips. Like, lady, I'm just pregnant, not hyperventilating." I laughed. After the dinner party, I replayed that moment for what it was. Not humor, panic. She hadn't expected me to be home that morning. I'd taken the day off to rest. She panicked because she thought he might have texted. And the more I opened my eyes, the more things I saw. Her laptop, which used to live on the kitchen counter, migrated permanently to the bedroom, password locked. She took calls on speaker before, now it was AirPods all day. When I offered to get her prenatal vitamins during my grocery run, she said no, insisted on ordering them online herself because you always get the wrong kind. I looked at our bank account, nothing alarming, but she'd stopped using the joint card for gas and groceries. Now it was Apple Pay, her card. When I asked why, she waved it off. "Points, babe, I'm just trying to get the miles up for a baby vacation later." I nodded, smiled, took note. Then there were the moods, sudden swings, not just hormonal, defensive. One evening I said something benign. I think it was, "You seem tired lately," and she practically bit my head off. "Wow, thanks. Glad to know I look like hell to you." That wasn't tired. That was guilt, trying to find somewhere to land. And like a fool, I tried to comfort it. I told her she looked beautiful. I offered to make her tea. I told myself she was under pressure. I even picked up 2 more tutoring hours per week. Early sessions, 6:30 a.m., with kids whose parents paid in cash. Told her I wanted to help, that I was stepping up. She said nothing, just nodded, then went back to her phone. After the dinner party, I opened that notebook again, dated the next page, November 6th. Her eyes didn't light up when I said I took extra hours. She didn't even say thank you, just stared at her phone like it knew more about our future than I did. I didn't want confrontation. I wanted clarity, because maybe, I was wrong. Maybe she was just overwhelmed. Maybe stress made her say things to her friends that she didn't mean. Maybe that whisper I heard wasn't the whole story. So I decided to gather the whole story myself. I began logging everything, not obsessively, not like a lunatic in a spiral, calm, precise. I created a new tab in a spreadsheet, camouflaged among my school grading docs, and listed every appointment, expense, and comment that raised an eyebrow. I didn't accuse, didn't even hint. I kissed her forehead at night. I held her hand at the doctor's when I was invited, which wasn't often. I didn't play detective out of vengeance. I did it because something sacred had been broken, and I needed to know if I had been the only one holding the pieces all this time. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her phone against the wall. I didn't demand to know who Brad was or when exactly she decided to turn me into a living ghost in my own house. What I did instead was drive out to a small clinic on the edge of town, far from where Sarah's OBGYN operated, and handed over a ceramic coffee mug and a hairbrush wrapped in a Ziploc bag. The nurse didn't blink. I guess mine wasn't the first marriage dissolving under polite silence and fluorescent lights. I told them what I wanted: paternity confirmation, no unnecessary alerts, mail results to a P.O. box I'd set up that morning in a different zip code. No email, no phone call, just ink on paper. I even paid in cash. The whole thing cost me $419. I walked out with a receipt and a strange sense of clarity. Back home, Sarah was assembling baby shower invitations at the dining table. Pink cardstock, a cutesy cartoon elephant holding balloons. She glanced up when I walked in. "Did you pick up the almond milk?" "Yep," I said, setting the groceries down. "Also thinking I should come with you to your next appointment." She froze just long enough for me to catch it. "Why? You've been working so much lately." "Yeah, but I miss hearing the heartbeat," I said, keeping my voice soft. "I'd like to be there." Her smile was tight. "It's just a checkup. All the more reason to come." A pause. Then, "Whatever makes you happy, Daniel." That phrase used to sound like love. Now it sounded like resignation. That night I pulled the financial thread. I wasn't rich, not in the dramatic Hollywood revenge sense, but I'd spent 40 years teaching history while living like it was the Depression. No kids, no real vacations, just compound interest and an unhealthy attachment to coupon clipping. I had a decent sum saved, enough to matter. The first thing I did was close the joint savings account we barely touched. Transferred it all to a revocable living trust I opened in my name only. Named my niece Lydia as secondary beneficiary. She teaches middle school math and still rents a basement apartment in Raleigh. She could use the leg up. Then I called my lawyer, quiet man, younger than me, plays chess with his paralegal during lunch, and told him I wanted to revise my will. "Add any new heirs?" he asked, light humor in his tone. "Just subtracting one," I said. The next day, I canceled the monthly auto deposit into Sarah's so-called baby business fund, a vague little startup she claimed she was building to sell organic baby care kits to high-end moms. She said it would be her legacy. I smiled when she told me that, said I was proud. I should have checked the domain registration. Turns out the business site wasn't even live. And when I went through the receipts for her startup materials, the purchases were oddly personal. Makeup, designer maternity wear, a $300 silk robe, no inventory, no suppliers, no packaging, just her new image, on my dime. I didn't bring it up. Instead, I updated the passwords on every online account I owned, changed security questions, moved my pension payout to a different direct deposit line, froze the home equity line she'd opened for renovations. We never started them. She asked me that night, "Did the savings account get flagged or something?" I got an alert. "Oh yeah," I said, not missing a beat. "Bank's updating fraud protection. Probably nothing." She nodded. Weird. I watched her closely. She believed me. But her eyes flickered, uncertain. It was the first time I felt the balance of power tilt back toward me, even if only slightly. She still thought I didn't know, that I was just going through some late-life financial nesting. Good, let her think that. Every step I took, every document I copied, every detail I logged in that increasingly thick notebook, it was all method, no chaos. Sarah might have traded me in emotionally, but legally, financially, she was still playing on a board I'd built, using pieces I designed, and if she was going to try to write me out of her future, she'd better hope I didn't start writing her out of mine. By late February, Sarah had transformed into a social media saint. Her belly finally rounded, and with it came the flood of curated moments. Mirror selfies with hash-blessed captions, time-lapse bump videos set to acoustic guitar covers, and carefully angled shots of nursery progress featuring pastel wallpaper I hadn't seen once in real life. Our guest room still held folded laundry and unopened Amazon boxes. "Let's not stress about the real thing," she told me one night. "People just want to see the idea of a nursery." Ah yes, an idea, much like the idea that I was about to become a father. She handed me a ceramic mug that read, "Best Daddy to Be Ever" one morning, grinning wide while I stirred my coffee. I took it without blinking, held it like a trophy, even posted a photo on Facebook with the caption, "Feeling lucky today." The comments rolled in. Former students, old co-workers, my cousin in Tallahassee, everyone wanted to congratulate us. Sarah beamed. Every like, every comment, every emoji-laden "so happy for you guys" fed her like sunlight through a window. What they didn't see was me, later that night, logging onto my private spreadsheet to add a new entry. February 19th, photo op, daddy-to-be mug, gifted during breakfast. No mention of OB appointment yesterday. Claimed baby kicked during walk. No walk happened. This was the rhythm now. She'd build the lie, and I'd quietly tag it, store it, date stamp it, like a librarian of betrayal. She started a planning committee for her baby shower, just her and two of her friends, who I now recognized as co-stars from the Dinner Party Whisper. They met twice a week, mostly for wine disguised as non-alcoholic spritzers and Pinterest scrolling. I overheard one meeting from the hallway. Sarah said she didn't want a registry, just Venmo donations so we don't get stuff we won't use. Efficient. I continued playing the part. When guests came over, I rubbed her back gently, asked about her cravings. Once, I even kissed her stomach in front of her cousin, who teared up and called us a miracle couple. Inside, I was ice, just layers and layers of ice. Then came the night that officially killed any lingering trace of doubt. It was a Thursday, cold outside. I came home late from tutoring and paused in the hall before entering the kitchen. The house was mostly quiet except for the faint murmur of Sarah's voice coming from the den. She didn't hear me, or maybe just assumed I wasn't back yet. "I'm just saying," she whispered, "if the timing gets tight, I'll just say it was early labor. It'll be fine." Silence, then a chuckle. "It's not like Daniel can count backwards." More laughter. I stood there a moment, let the words soak in. If the timing gets tight, which meant even she wasn't sure when the clock had started, meant the lies weren't just emotional, they were logistical, coordinated. I quietly backed up 2 steps, turned, and walked into the garage to write it down in my notebook under March 2nd. Overheard. Contingency plan labor timing. Implies false conception date. Suggests fallback excuse if questioned. The next morning, she handed me a grocery list with almond butter and decaf coffee and kissed my cheek like we weren't living 2 completely different lives. She was getting bolder, more confident. The lies weren't just maintenance anymore. They were flourishing. At brunch with friends that weekend, she told a story about how Danny cried when he heard the heartbeat the first time. Everyone awed. I laughed because they assumed it was true. She nudged me. "He's still such a sap." I raised my mimosa. Wouldn't have it any other way. Inside, I was counting down the days until the envelope arrived. And still, I waited. Because here's the thing about liars. The longer they speak uninterrupted, the more rope they give themselves. Sarah didn't know it yet, but she wasn't building a life. She was building the stage for her own collapse. And I was just waiting for the final scene. The envelope was smaller than I expected. No red stamp, no dramatic language, just a plain white rectangle with my P.O. box handwritten across the front. I opened it in my car, parked behind a shuttered gas station on Route 4, engine off, radio silent. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. No, we regret to inform you. No soft language, just math, just clarity. I sat with it for a long time, not shaking, not sweating. It wasn't rage that came over me. It was gravity, like finally finding the floor in a dark room you've been falling through for weeks. There it was. Concrete, cold, solid, undeniable. I folded the paper carefully, drove home like I had a pie in the passenger seat I didn't want to spill. At home, I waited until Sarah went upstairs for her bath. 20-minute window, minimum. She loved her soaks. I walked into the guest room, opened the linen closet, and lifted the 3rd stack of towels. Tucked the sealed envelope under the bottom one, behind an old heating pad box no one touched anymore. That envelope wasn't just paper. It was an ending in disguise. But not yet. Not today. Sarah called from upstairs. "Can you bring me my phone? I left it in the kitchen." I brought it to her. She smiled up at me from the tub, bubbles cresting over her belly. "Thanks, babe," she said. "You're so good to me." I kissed her forehead. "You make it easy." She grinned and slipped back into the foam like a goddess in a painting. I watched her for a second, memorizing that face, not out of nostalgia, strategy. I wanted to know exactly how it looked when a lie smiled back at you like it loved you. From that point on, I leaned in. I never missed another appointment. When she hesitated about one, I'd say something gentle like, "Come on, I want to hear our baby's heartbeat again." She'd pause, smile, sometimes uneasily, but always said yes. She never asked me to hold the ultrasound photos anymore. Maybe she could feel something, or maybe she was just hoping I wouldn't notice what the technician quietly mumbled about development timelines. But I noticed. Every time. Still, I smiled. Still, I kissed her cheek in the waiting room. Still, I let her friends post stories of me holding the clinic door open like I was the poster boy for late-life fatherhood. I even bought a little wooden sign that said, "Welcome, baby," and hung it on the front door. She took a photo of it with her phone, beamed like we were kids again. "You're getting into it," she teased. I smiled. "Of course I am." Then I picked a date for the baby shower, June 15th. Gave her enough time to get the 2nd trimester glow fully polished, and her friends enough time to make the decorations tastefully minimalist. She was thrilled. said she'd start a group chat, asked if I'd help her pick out a dress. Nothing too flashy, she said. I want to look real, like one of those effortless moms. You already do, I said. It wasn't sarcasm. She was effortless in a way. Lying was like breathing for her, natural, automatic, and beautiful, in the way a slow-motion car crash can be beautiful before the glass shatters. I kept watching her, taking mental snapshots of each move. Her belly got bigger, her posts more frequent. She started referring to the baby as our little miracle in captions. One day she even painted a onesie by hand. Future class president. She held it up, beaming. You think he'll have your nose? I smiled. Let's hope he gets your diplomacy. She giggled, unaware she was talking about someone else's child, someone else's blood. I imagined telling her, he already does, you're both professional liars. But I didn't, not yet, because timing is everything. The more certain she became, the more fragile her story became. The baby grew. The lie expanded with him, like a balloon Sarah refused to believe could pop. But I'd already heard it stretch, and I had the pin. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. It waits, watches, lets people build their towers of deceit beam by beam, and then it sends a breeze, a nudge, something small, almost accidental, a missed call, a mistimed glance, a slip of the thumb. In our case, it was a notification banner. We were sitting in the OB/GYN waiting room, 4th floor, same faded blue chairs, same knockoff watercolors on the walls. Sarah was scrolling through Instagram on her phone, carefully tilting the screen away from me whenever I leaned too close. I didn't react, just smiled, kept sipping my lukewarm coffee. They called her name. She stood. Hold this, she said, handing me her purse before I could offer. She disappeared into the hallway with the nurse, and I sat alone, holding a pastel floral purse like it was a holy relic. I didn't go digging, I didn't unzip or snoop, I didn't have to. The phone lit up on its own. A name appeared at the top of the screen in bold white letters. Brad. Below it, a single previewed message. You still sure it's mine? No period, no emoji, just 7 words that felt like a baseball bat wrapped in velvet. I stared at the screen for 3 seconds, maybe 4, then it faded to black. I let it sit there. Let the silence fill the cracks in my skin. The name told me everything. Not Marcia Yoga this time, no alias, just Brad. Like even she was tired of pretending. Or maybe she'd grown careless, confident, or both. When she came back out, she looked radiant. The kind of glow you can't fake, even if the circumstances behind it are pure theater. I stood, handed her the purse without a word, and asked, How was it? Heartbeat strong, she said, rubbing her belly. The doc said everything's on track. I smiled. Good. We walked to the car. She drove, talked about what color the nursery should be, even though neither of us had touched that room in weeks. I nodded when appropriate, laughed once when she joked about how the baby would probably come out bossy like her sister. But when we pulled into the driveway and stepped inside, she stopped suddenly at the edge of the kitchen. Are you mad at me? She asked, too fast. I didn't flinch. No, why? I don't know. You've just been different, distant. I looked at her calmly. Just tired. She searched my face like it was a map she didn't recognize anymore. Is this about the appointment? Did I say something wrong? No, I said softly, brushing past her. You and the baby come first. Always. It was the truth in a way. They did come first. First in the list of people I would no longer protect after a certain date in June. She blinked hard, eyes wet. I'm sorry. I know I've been emotional. I know I've been a little off. I stepped forward, wrapped both arms around her and hugged her tightly. Not stiff, not forced, but gentle, present. She melted into me, exhaled like she'd just been told everything was going to be okay. I looked over her shoulder, into the hallway behind her, eyes settling on the closed door of the guest room. The drawer was still there, still holding the envelope, still waiting like a coiled spring. Sarah pressed her cheek into my chest and whispered, I don't deserve you. I kept my arms around her, smiled faintly. You're probably right. That night she made pasta. We ate in the den while a documentary played in the background. She curled up next to me and rested her hand on my thigh like she used to, like she was trying to rewind something she couldn't name. She was panicking. I could see it in the way she kept glancing at my face during dinner, like she expected me to ask something, dig, explode. But I didn't. She was trying to fix something she didn't know was already broken beyond repair. Or maybe she did know. Maybe that text from Brad was her breeze, her nudge. Maybe that single message had poked a hole in her airtight fantasy. I watched her carry on, watched the cracks widen, still didn't say a word, because she was right about one thing. I wasn't the man she married anymore. 3 days before the baby shower, I sat at the kitchen table while Sarah arranged hand-cut name cards into place settings on her iPad. There was a spreadsheet open next to her with RSVP notes, color-coded even. "Deborah's bringing deviled eggs," she muttered. "Rachel's gluten-free, don't let me forget." She tapped away, cheerful and precise. Meanwhile, I added one name to my own private list, Brad. No last name, no address. Just a single Gmail burner I'd set up that morning. Gifts for baby2024@outlook.com. Seemed fitting. The email was short. Subject: You should come. Message: Sarah wants you there. It's time. June 15th, 2 p.m. You know the place. No name, no signature. He replied in 6 minutes. On it. That's when I knew two things. He still believed this could work out in his favor. He was even dumber than she was. I closed the laptop, walked into the office, and pulled out a manila envelope I'd prepped 2 weeks ago but hadn't sealed yet. Inside were 7:4x6 color prints, screenshots of text messages between Sarah and Brad, Google Maps GPS logs from her phone, exported from our linked Find My account she forgot I still had access to, and one blown-up photo of them kissing in the front seat of a Subaru Outback parked outside the Blue Fern Inn. A second envelope, already sealed, sat in the drawer beside it, the DNA results. I pulled out a black Sharpie and wrote in clean, deliberate print on the front of the first envelope, "To the real father." No quotation marks, no flourish, just the facts. I slipped both envelopes into the inside pocket of my jacket, hung it carefully on the coat rack, and walked back into the kitchen. Sarah was now printing out a baby shower agenda. 1:45. Guests arrive 2 o'clock. Light bites and drinks 2:30. Games and photos 3:15. Gift opening 4 o'clock. Toast from Daniel. That part made me smile. "Hey," I said casually. "I added someone to the invite list, from my side." She looked up. "Who?" "Old work friend. Don't worry, he won't eat much." She narrowed her eyes slightly. "Which friend?" "You don't know him." "Oh." A pause. "Okay, just send me his name so I can add it to the place cards." I nodded. "Will do." I never sent it, never needed to. There'd be no place card, just a chair, preferably somewhere near the front. That night, as she showered, I stood in the guest room, the same room where it had all started, the same room where she'd whispered about the pregnancy not being mine, the room where I'd first realized that the woman I'd spent a third of my life with had quietly rewritten our future and assumed I'd never catch up to the edit. I opened the towel drawer, pulled the DNA envelope out, and gave it one last glance. The page was starting to curl slightly at the edges. Not from age, from pressure. It was ready. So was I. And Sarah? She was upstairs humming to herself, blissfully unaware that her carefully constructed house of mirrors had one final guest arriving soon. One who wouldn't need a name card because the truth didn't require an introduction. It only needed timing, and mine was perfect. The sky was too blue for what I had planned. Not a single cloud, not even a breeze to cut the June heat. It was the kind of day people remember fondly. The smell of citrus punch, the crinkle of tissue paper, that crisp sound of streamers snapping in the wind. A baby shower straight out of a Pinterest board. Sarah looked the part, flowing blush pink dress, hair curled soft around her shoulders, pearl earrings she'd found in the back of her drawer. She glowed. Everyone said so, over and over, like it was a script they were given at the door. "Radiant. You're glowing, Mama. You make pregnancy look elegant." She played it perfectly, tilted her belly just so in every photo, grinned at every gift, hugged every guest with rehearsed gratitude. And me? I smiled too. I posed next to her in picture after picture, arm gently around her back, hand resting lightly on the small of her spine. Someone said we looked like one of those couples you'd see on the cover of a parenting magazine. I nearly laughed. The yard was done up in soft pink and beige, floating balloons with white ribbon tails. "Hello, little one" spelled out in wooden cutouts over the archway, tables lined with finger sandwiches, cupcakes topped with edible gold flakes, and a framed sign at the drink station that said, "Mocktails for Mama, mimosas for the mayhem," classy, subtle, perfectly crafted lies. The first 2 hours passed in a blur of polite laughter and champagne flutes. Sarah held court like a queen. I stayed close, supportive husband, ever attentive. At 3:58 p.m., just 2 minutes ahead of her printed schedule, I cleared my throat. "Everyone," I said, raising my glass. "Can I just say a quick something?" Sarah's eyes lit up. The toast! People turned. The chatter softened. Someone shushed a child. I looked around the backyard, letting my gaze rest on each familiar face. Friends, co-workers, neighbors, a few I hadn't seen in years, all here to celebrate a miracle. I just want to thank you all, I said, voice steady. Really, for coming, for supporting us. This has been an incredible time in our lives. Sarah clutched my arm. She was tearing up already. I'm grateful, I continued, and proud, and hopeful. Pause. A breath. And before we wrap up the festivities, I'd like to give a small gift of my own. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pulled out the first envelope, plain, cream-colored, sealed. I handed it to Sarah. A little something, I said, for the mother. She looked stunned, pleasantly so. Her friends awed in unison. A few clapped. She clutched it delicately like it was a love letter. Before she could open it, I raised my hand. But there's one more, a bigger one. I turned slightly, eyes scanning the crowd, and then landed on him, standing near the back under the shade of a jacaranda tree. Button-down shirt, khakis, sunglasses. He'd been pretending to blend in, but he stuck out like rust on chrome. I stepped forward and handed him the second envelope. For the father, I said, clear as a bell. Silence. A full, honest, biblical silence. Sarah's hand froze on the flap of the first envelope. Brad's sunglasses slipped an inch down his nose. No one breathed. I looked back at the crowd, smiled. Let's call it a pre-delivery delivery, I said. 2 gifts, just in time. Sarah blinked. Her lips parted, then closed. Her hand trembled. Brad hadn't moved. Someone coughed in the back. Sarah whispered, Daniel, what is this? I didn't answer, because some things aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to detonate. Sarah opened the envelope with fingers that had suddenly forgotten how to function. She fumbled, her nails catching the seam, tearing it unevenly. Her eyes darted up to me once, wide, confused, pleading, as if I'd just handed her a snake disguised in linen. Then she pulled out the single sheet. Her breath caught. She scanned it. Then again. Then a third time. The pink drained from her cheeks. I watched her pupils twitch as they reached the line. Bold, centered, final. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. The room had gone dead quiet. Even the birds outside seemed to hush. She looked up slowly, lips moving without sound. Her mouth tried to shape the word what, but no sound came out. Then, almost simultaneously, Brad tore into his envelope. Not cautious, he didn't treat it like a bomb, more like a lottery ticket. Inside, a stack of glossy photos. First, him and Sarah in his car, parked outside the Blue Fern Inn. Her head on his shoulder, his hand on her thigh. Next, hotel registration logs, dates, times, room numbers. Third, 2 screenshots, texts from Sarah's phone. One said, if he ever finds out, we'll say it happened before I conceived. The other, I just need a little more time, he's still paying for everything. Brad paled. He looked up at me like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Not sorry, just shocked anyone was paying attention. Sarah's hands dropped to her lap. The paper floated to the grass. She looked around, suddenly realizing she was surrounded. All those adoring faces, her curated audience, were now staring at her like she'd started a fire and locked the exits. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to yell or sob or smash anything. I just took one small step forward so everyone could see me clearly and said, congratulations to you two, I'm out. No sarcasm, no malice, just a full stop. Then I reached into my jacket pocket one last time and pulled out the keys to the house, her house now, and set them on the gift table, right between a wrapped diaper pail and a Target gift card. The only sound was the wind rustling the paper plates. I turned and walked. No one followed. Not a single person. Not even her mother, who stood frozen, one hand pressed to her chest, the other clutching a mimosa like it might save her from drowning. Sarah didn't scream. She didn't chase. She didn't fall to her knees or confess or deny. She just sat there surrounded by presents wrapped in pink ribbon, holding a piece of paper that told her the one thing she never planned for, that I knew, and that I was done pretending not to. 3 days passed, not a word from me, not a whisper. But from her? The flood began almost instantly. She called twice that same night, then 8 times the next morning, then again at noon, 3 p.m., 5:17, and once more just after midnight. Each call rang out into the same silence, a number that no longer belonged to anyone she knew. I'd changed everything. Number, bank credentials, mailing address. I pulled the spare key from under the garage rock she never thought I knew about, wiped my name from the utilities, canceled the security code login she never noticed I'd added her number to, vanished, not with noise, but with intention. By the morning of the third day, she stopped calling and started circling. I got a message through my brother, not a call, not a voicemail, just a forwarded screenshot. Her text to him read, "Please, just tell him to talk to me. One conversation. I need to explain." He sent back one line. "He left you the only thing you ever valued, attention. Now he's free." I saved the screenshot, then deleted it. I was sitting at the edge of a state park trailhead when I saw it. Early morning, no people, just a few birds, a pair of deer in the distance, and the crunch of gravel under my boots. The phone felt light in my hand, lighter than it had in months. I opened my files, navigated to the last folder at the bottom of the list, the one that had grown slowly, methodically, line by line. Evidence, not mine. Inside were 147 items. Voice memos, photo captures, PDF exports, metadata, screen recordings, the kind of folder that could dismantle a life or preserve one. I held my thumb over it for just a second, then tapped, delete. The screen blinked once, gone. I didn't need it anymore. She already had everything she deserved, and more importantly, less of what she never valued, me. No lawsuits, no spectacle, no social media drama, just absence, the cleanest kind of closure. The lie had ended, and the truth didn't need a follow-up. The wind moved through the trees ahead, bending the branches in long, slow arcs like the trail was bowing open for me alone. No one to answer to, no one to perform for, just peace. And for the first time in months, I walked forward without looking back.